Welcome back to Observing the Sabbath. I'm Nathaniel Molnar, and this is our final part of our look at Black Sabbath's 1970 first studio album, Black Sabbath. So we are going to be listening to A Bit of Finger / Sleeping Village / Warning. And so this will be the last video where we're looking at the songs, and then I will post a full album review afterwards, which is just kind of an accumulation of all my thoughts on the album, and yeah, and then we'll be moving on to Paranoid, probably next week. So once again, I say this every video, but I just want to reiterate, I am not listening to these songs for the first time. This isn't one of those reaction videos where I'm listening to it for the first time and giving you my honest first reaction. I've listened to these songs hundreds of times. This is more me knowing the full contextual history of the band, kind of commentating and giving my thoughts on each song as we go through them. So without further ado, let's get started. This is A Bit of Finger / Sleeping Village / Warning. I almost called it Behind the Wall Sleep. We did that one earlier. And I've always thought of like a swamp when I hear this opening. I love that, like, I don't even know what instrument it is. Maybe just a regular guitar, but if it's a different instrument, I'm not exactly sure what it is. That bum bum. It reminds me of like a toad or something in a swamp. You do kind of have that feeling of haziness kind of setting over the environment. And that's something I talked about with Black Sabbath, and I've mentioned a couple of times throughout these videos, is Black Sabbath does a really good job of setting up imagery and describing things and putting you right there, as well as taking the actual music, the guitar and the drums, and sort of creating that atmosphere, creating that imagery, and reinforcing it with the actual instruments. It's really interesting how they're able to do that, to put you right there in what they're describing. Perfect Tony right here. Now this is something I did not know until today, that Warning is actually a cover of another band that came out 3 days earlier. I wrote it down because I knew I was going to forget it. The Ainsley Dunbar Retaliation from 1967. I had no idea that Warning was a cover, which in retrospect, knowing that, makes a lot more sense, because I love the song Warning. I think it's a really great song. I've always kind of thought it stood out. It was different from the rest. And lyrically, and this was something I've always kind of thought, but then now knowing that it's a cover puts it in place. Lyrically, it always felt different from a lot of the rest of Black Sabbath's songs. It doesn't feel like it's written by the same person, and of course now we know that it wasn't. But it's still a really great song. I really like it. You have the offset guitars. I love this part of the album. Just, you have it in Behind the Wall Sleep, you have it throughout parts of NIB, where it's just kind of just the guitars, and it's just this sort of this long stretch of instrumental. It's so good, and it does so much to add to the flow and the feel of this whole album. Now, I listened to the original version of this song, and you can hear the musical similarities, but obviously they just take it in their own direction, with the guitars tuned down a lot lower, as is the style of Black Sabbath and really what Tony did to create heavy metal. But yeah, so you definitely hear the similarities, but that's more of like a folkier version of the song, where this is a lot more, well, more Black Sabbath. I mentioned with NIB that on this album there are 2 songs about love. The first one was NIB, which was a song about Lucifer seducing a person, and love in that sense. And then there is this song, Warning, which was about love. Now, already it's kind of set apart in that it's a cover, so it's not really like Geezer who wrote a lot of the lyrics, or Tony who set the musical direction or wrote the music itself. So it's not really coming from them as much as it is them taking something else and kind of putting their own spin on it. But it is interesting to look at NIB and Warning and kind of compare and contrast what they are. I mentioned in NIB that I am not as big of a fan of songs that are just about love. And that's something about NIB that's really interesting, is that while it has the appearance of being a love song, it's actually a step further in being Lucifer seducing somebody, and so it kind of has an added element to it that makes it rather unique. This song is more just a straight up song about love and a person, the singer having feelings for this woman and her not reciprocating that love. And it's a good song. I think it's really cool and I enjoy listening to it and I really like it. But in terms of the lyrical nature of it, it is more simplistic compared to some of the other Black Sabbath songs. And again, not written by Black Sabbath, but I just think that's something interesting to look at. You have that feeling of wandering and progression with the extended guitar parts. Hearing the flow of this whole album of, if you're listening to it like as a record, when you have the whole flow of everything with Behind the Wall of Sleep and going into NIB and then going into this, it just has that sort of flow to it all the way through. And I just love those extended guitar pieces of the entire album. And that's something you don't have as much with latter albums, because a lot of the other albums were written and constructed to be albums, to be commercially produced things that were released to the public. And that's not to say that they're bad in any sort of way, they're absolutely not. But there's something so distinct about this album in that it was written and crafted initially to be a live set. And so it has that feeling that they're putting on a live set, that it's a show. And so it's not so much about each song rigidly in its own place. It has more of this flow to it all the way through. And I think that's one of the strongest elements of this whole album. And you definitely get a lot of that flow in this song. You have the illusion that it's almost the end. It's not. We're like halfway through the song. I love the breakdowns, the escalation and the breakdown and the rebuilding, and it's really like a roller coaster all the way through this whole song. It's building, and then it breaks down, and it's breaking down, and every little element is just kind of stripped away until you get down to like the bare essence of what's playing right here. It's like tearing everything apart. Till it's like pretty much nothing, till it's a standstill, and then it comes right back in, and then it's going up, up, up. when you listen to the original version of the song, you can definitely tell they took it and really made it their own with this. And the blues element in this song is so evident. It's throughout this whole album, but it's really clear in this song. And that might be that there's more of a distinct blues feel to the original song that they're kind of emulating, but that's throughout this whole album because Black Sabbath was so deeply influenced by the blues, and they were originally a blues band. I forget, it was a long name that they had, like a 7-person group, and then they got out some of the members. It might have been 6 people. Removed some of the members and got it down to this core, and then they kind of, with the song Black Sabbath, then kind of redefined the identity of the band to be more of what we know it to be today. But they have this really strong, concrete blues influence in their songwriting and their rhythms and the flow of everything, and you can hear it a lot in the song. This is just some of the best of Tony just riffing. Just him kind of just going off and doing his own thing. I feel like this whole part is really structured around Tony being able to just do his own thing. It really feels like, in a live show, when they kind of let each person of the band, whether it's the drummer having their solo or the guitarist having their solo, this feels like the part where they're really letting the guitarist kind of shine and have their part to play in the live show, and it feels like this part of the song, or this part of the set, is crafted for that. And you have the breakdown again, slowing things down. I love this riff. This whole warning might be one of my favorite parts of the whole album. Not my favorite song, but just favorite parts of the entire album. It's just so good and fun to listen to. It has like a careless nature to it. It just kind of has a sense of whimsy in a way. I just love how extended it is, the whole instrumental part, breaking up the verses between that Ozzy sings. Breakdown, and then now we're back. This whole song is literally just an extended period of time, breaking down, coming to a standstill, stopping, starting right back up, building, 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 progressing, breaking down, stopping, right back to it, and just that over and over and over again, that pattern. Now they're just fucking around. I love it. And right back into it. Love to see this live. This must have such a great energy. Like, I'm just imagining them being in like these really small venues before they're big, of like, you know, a small tiny stage, or in basements, or, you know, that kind of really isolated with like 20, 30 people, 40 people out in the audience, and they're just playing this. To be one of those people at the very, very early Black Sabbath shows before this album came out, probably back when they were still called Earth. To be there and to see this and to hear these songs and it be so completely unlike anything you've ever heard in your entire life, like, if there's ever time travel, if time travel ever actually comes into existence, which it most likely will not, if it ever does, that's one of the things I want to do, is I want to travel to one of those early shows and just be able to hear this. Bunch of, like, 22-year-olds, people my age, 22. To me, that's one of the craziest things. Alright, that's the end of the album, or end of the song, and of the album. That's one of the things that's crazy to me, is that so I am 22. When the first album came out, they were all 22. They were 22 years old. They were my age, and they made this. They made this. To me, when I realized that they were actually 22 years old, I was just, that was crazy to learn. It's like, what am I doing? You know, if there are these 22-year-old kids from Birmingham, England, who put out that and kick off their entire career, what am I doing? You know? So, anyways, what a great conclusion to the album. I've really enjoyed going through this whole album, and I will be posting my full album review. Now that I've done each individual song, I'll do a separate video where I just talk about the album as a whole, because I think it's their first, and it's one of their best, in my opinion. I love this album so much. And so that concludes my thoughts on A Bit of Finger / Sleeping Village / Warning. Question is, guys, what do you think? What were your thoughts on this song, this album? Do you agree with me and my thoughts on Warning and just how much you like the breakdowns and the slow progression of everything? Or is it not as much a favor of yours? Did you know? Because I didn't know until I literally started looking things up real quick before I started to record this. Did you know that Warning was a cover? Because like I said, I didn't. Leave me your thoughts in the comment section below. Once again, I'm Nathaniel Molnar. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure to like, make sure to comment, make sure to subscribe to keep up with Observing the Sabbath, because we will be doing our album review of the 1970 album Black Sabbath, and then we're going to be going right into Paranoid. So you'll want to make sure you stay up to date on all of that. So until our next observation,